May we see the hands of members in their first year of sobriety, both in the room and in the Zoom meeting? Before introducing the speaker, we would like to remind the group that the only authority in AA is a loving God as he, as he may express himself in our group conscience. So any opinions expressed by the speaker are those of the speaker. Our speaker tonight is Ty H. from Burbank.
Hey everybody, my name's Ty and I am an alcoholic. Grateful to be sober and to be with you today. Thank you, Danielle, for inviting me to come share my experience, strength, and hope. I want to thank Lizzie for accompanying me. Lizzie lives in 29 Palms, California. She drove out yesterday and stayed with me overnight and then came with me today. So talk about going to any length. So appreciative. I'll give you the stats. I got sober January 2nd of 1998. My sponsor is Herb K. of Palos Verdes, California. My home group is the Early Show, which is a Zoom meeting that started in the first week of COVID. We meet 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. 7 days a week, and it has everything that a great AA meeting should have: old-timers, newcomers, service, literature, seventh tradition, et cetera, et cetera. Sponsorship. If you're looking for an early morning meeting on Zoom, I'd be happy to give you the link after the meeting. There is nothing particularly interesting about my drunkalog. Oh, I want to welcome all the newcomers. Welcome. We're glad you're here. This thing really works. I hope you'll stick around. And Chris, thank you so much. Happy birthday to all the celebrants, but Chris, your story really touched me, and thank you for being an example under such adverse conditions. We don't drink no matter what. That's it. That's it. Nothing particularly interesting about my drunkalog. I drank as much as I could for as long as I could. I drank when I didn't want to drink. I drank when it stopped working. I drank when it got me in trouble. I had never tried to stop drinking before, and I never had 2 drinks in my life. If I had 2 drinks at your party, that just meant that I had pre-gamed, had my 2 drinks with you, and then went home and post-gamed so I could really drink like I wanted to. I had my first drunk at 9 on Olympia Beer behind the housing tract in Irvine, California, where I grew up with some older kids. They all got busted at the school dance. I was too young to go to the school dance because I didn't even go to that school. And I did what I did my entire drinking career. I lied about it, I passed out, and nobody found out. And I couldn't wait to do it again. I got sober at 34 and a half, so I had an approximately 25-year drinking career. Some people drink longer, some people drink more. I know in my soul I earned my seat here, and it's being sober in AA is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So if you're new or relatively new and you think that I'm full of it, that's cool. Our book tells us this is a design for living that really works, and it really does. My first sponsor, Bill, used to say to me when I was new, Ty, this thing works 100% of the time for 100% of the people that do it 100%. And what your 100% is and what my 100% is may be completely different, but you know, I learned early on that I don't try to shove AA into my life. I plan my life around AA, because this is the end all and be all for me, because everything that I hold dear, if I drink again, I will lose it all and I will never be back. I'll be like the Kool-Aid man busting through the fence. You'll see my silhouette and some smoke and I'll never be back. Because I know I have another drunk in me, but I know that I do not have another recovery in me. So I choose to stay a day at a time. I can't tell you I'm never going to drink again because I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But I can tell you I'm not going to drink today, because I got up this morning and I went with Lizzie and we hit our knee. Oh no, we didn't hit our knees this morning. We sat down. We're getting old, man. Knees are tough. We start with the set aside prayer. We do steps 1, 2, and 3 as a prayer. We do the third and seventh step prayer, and then we do kind of our free verse poetry jam, whatever we're feeling that day, prayers. And we meditate regularly. I meditate regularly. And I do the deal, I do all the stuff that we do here. Not because it's a chore, not because I'm forced to, but because it's the joy of my life. That time with this power that I have no understanding of, I call my higher power God, as I don't understand him, her, or it. I don't know what it is. My first sponsor, Bill, also said when I was starting on step 2 for the first time, Ty, the only thing you need to know about this God is that it exists and you're not it. The first part I understood. The second part I was like, I'm not sure. Because if I squeeze the armrest of the airplane seat hard enough, I know that will make the plane stay up. So I got sober at the Burbank group of Alcoholics Anonymous, which has been in existence since 1947. It started in a horse stall at the Equestrian Center, and it's still serving alcoholics today. It's a very powerful group, and that's where all my roots come from. When I started working the first step the first time, I had a real problem with all of it. I couldn't admit my powerlessness over alcohol. I could not conceive of how I could not have power over this liquid in a bottle. And through a series of writings, the sponsorship chain that I originally came from, there's 30 writing assignments that cover the first 3 steps. And so the more I wrote, the more I came to see that my behavior, my thinking, how I spoke to people, proved to me that this ethyl alcohol certainly had more power over me than I had over myself, and I had no ability to resist it. Because once I started it, as the doctor's opinion tells me, the mental obsession drives me to that first drink, and once I have the first drink, it's over, I drink until I black out or pass out. Every single time. Somebody's house for a party or whatever, go in the bathroom at some point and look in the mirror and go, oh, dude, you overshot it again. Oh, well. And then it was off to the races, for the rest of the night. Unmanageability, I think, is the greatest secret in the rooms of AA, is the spiritual malady. Well, certainly I've been sober over 27 years now. I can manage my life on my own. Wrong. I like in the third step prayer where we ask God to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. And in the second step, I believe my experience is, or rather in the first step, that unmanageability, I ask God every day to help me manage my life because I cannot do it on my own. I'm responsible for the footwork. I'm not responsible for the results. And I'm as powerless over my spiritual life as I am over my alcoholism. I don't know what this power is going to deem fit or right or wrong or whatever. I do know that it's all-knowing, all-loving, all-caring, has an amazing sense of humor. Lizzie and I called our friend Gaetana, who is a dear friend of ours from Altadena, where we both lived for a long time. And she lives outside of Boston. They said, oh, we're going down to a Carlsbad meeting and Ty's speaking tonight. And we're talking some more, and she's like, you're not going to believe this. There is a car in front of me with a Carlsbad sticker on it. Odd or God, I'll let you all decide for yourselves. Just, that's a minute thing, but Lizzie said it, God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. The only thing I think about when I come up here is just saying to this power I don't understand, God, please give me the words. I don't come up with note cards or an outline. I just try to speak from the heart. I talked a little bit about step 2. I was raised with absolutely no religious or spiritual training of any kind. God wasn't poo-pooed in our house, just wasn't talked about, just wasn't a concept or just nothing around that existed. So when I came to AA, and I was here for a few weeks, I started asking people, like, how do you pray? How do you meditate? What is this concept of God? How do you, here's the key word, figure it out. If you're new or relatively new, I'm here to tell you, don't try to figure anything out. There's a reason why our think slogan is many times hung upside down in the halls of AA. It's because my brain is really of no use to me, where sobriety and spiritual development and personal relationships and many other things are concerned. And it is only through you people teaching me and attempting to apply these 12 steps actively to my life each day to the best of my ability that any of this has been possible for me, you know? And some days I do really well, and other days I just mess it all up. And we have a step 9 to deal with that, but sometimes that's not enough. And I have to be okay with that, whoever I have transgressed against. And that's a hard thing to take when you know that you're to blame and you try to clean it up the best that you can and say, I'm willing to do anything to make it right between us, you know? Powerlessness one more time. So I cobbled together this higher power in step 2. And throughout my AA career, in my first marriage, we decided that we wanted to get our kids baptized, and we went to a Lutheran church for, 2 or 3 years. My sponsor and his wife sent their kids to the school there, and we kind of all went together, and it was interesting. And, you know, there's some wonderful people. One of the greatest things I ever heard was the pastor there. And he said, when I first started going there, Ty, I just want you to remember that this church is not a museum for saints, but a hospital for sinners. And I'm like, that was very powerful for me, you know? And I was in a book study there. We read a book by Richard Lawrence, which is outside literature. I'm probably not supposed to say that. But it's just about prayer and different types of prayer. And that helped me a lot to learn how to pray, you know, because I just didn't know. And I didn't know what I didn't know. As I got to step 3, I was told all I needed to do was make a decision. Seems simple enough. It's that next part, to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand God. Now that turning, in my experience, I'm incapable of. I cannot think my way into turning it over. You know, everyone I talk to every day, oh, I'm having this problem at work, I'm just gonna turn it over. It's like, really? How you can do that? I can't think my way into or will my way into turning it over. My experience is the turning it over comes in steps 4 through 9. Because if I'm spiritually clogged or backed up, it is steps 4 through 9 that allow me to roto-rooter this path between me and God so that I can stand in the sunlight of the Spirit. And before that, once again, I am powerless to do anything about it. So that was something that really stuck with me, you know. I didn't know what my will in my life was. What is that, you know? And my sponsor at the time just said, it's just your thoughts and your actions, you know. People make out a will, it's their thoughts on that day. Johnny gets $5,000 and Larry gets a bike and whatever. It's just, what are your thoughts that day? I'm gonna turn my thoughts, fat chance. Don't you know what goes on up here? This thing does nothing but think 24 hours a day. Sometimes it's super positive, sometimes it's out to kill me, you know? And my actions, do I have control over my actions? Which is based on my thinking, which is based on my emotion, which is based on my skewed perception? So I'm already 4 steps back, and I have no hope. And what I was told was the 12 steps of recovery can grind the lens of our perception, so as Chuck C said, we can truly have a new pair of glasses. Can I see reality as reality truly is? Not the story I tell myself about myself, not the story that I present to the public, but can Ty be honest with Ty about Ty? And can I interact with others in a sane, rational, kind, compassionate, loving way? Now, in the beginning, that just seemed like, what are you, nuts? No, not a chance. And I can tell you that I've made progress, and sometimes it's a little easier, and sometimes it's a little harder. But the difference is now I know better. I may not know in the moment, but shortly after that, I will kick my own butt if I have misbehaved in any way. And nobody beats up Ty like Ty beats up Ty, right? What do we call it? Pride in reverse. So that turning in step 3, I mean, I've been around long enough that I can do it pretty quickly, you know. If I'm having a challenge with whatever it is, personal or professional, I can write that inventory. Is it fear? Is it resentment? What are the character defects that I'm dealing with? Am I ready to let them go? Can I pray that this power will remove those defects, root and branch? Do I owe an amends? What would God have me do under these circumstances? You know? But in the beginning, it's really, you know, it's just chasing my own tail for a long time. Having, quote unquote, completed the 3rd step the first time, I think going through the steps the first time is like, it's life altering. But part of it is, you just got to get through them the first time, right? So I can continue to dig in, because the book tells me that nothing but continuous action upon these principles will bring the desired result, which is a spiritual awakening, the great promise for all of us. So I personally have continued to take the steps throughout my sobriety, not just with my 2 sponsors, but I've also enlisted the help of about, I think it's 10 or 11 step guides, men that I admired in the program who I wanted what they had, and I would just call them on the phone or go up to them after me and say, would you just take me through the steps? They weren't my sponsor. I talked to my sponsor all the time, but we would meet regularly, men, all these different times throughout my sobriety, and we would go through the 12 steps of recovery, you know, take about, on average, 6 to 7 months, and so fascinating, you know, to learn from other men and women, from other people. So the completion of the 3rd step that first time, you know, loaded me into the 4th step. And, you know, the 4th step gets a bad rap. Everyone's like, oh, I got to do the 4th step. It's going to be so scary and horrible. And I was like, bring it. I am so ready to unload all this caca. I've been holding so much garbage for so long, you know? And I did my resentments in the columns like in the book. And I did my fear inventory in the columns in the book and my sexual inventory. And when I was finished with it, I called Bill and said, I'm done. He's like, all right, I booked out a few hours. Let's do it on Saturday or whatever day it was. And I went over to his house, and we sat outside on the patio, and I told him all of it except one thing, and I didn't even know I didn't put it down. One thing, as much as I could do at that point. And I got rid of it. And we talked about my character defects, and in preparation for 6. And then he said it. What's the one secret you didn't put on this? And I knew exactly what it was in an instant. And I truly didn't try to hide it consciously. And I told him, and I'd never told a single soul. And I was free. Finally free of that thing that I felt so ashamed of. And so just ashamed, you know. Guilt is when you feel bad about something you did, but shame is like, it's about who I am as a human being. And it's tough, man. And if you suffer from guilt and shame, I'm here to tell you that the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous will lessen your guilt and shame. That's my experience. I think we don't talk about it enough, but I think maybe equally as important to reading that inventory process to God and another human being is when the book talks about meditating for an hour afterwards, going through the first 5 proposals. Did we, build on whatever it says, sand and not cement or rocks or whatever it is? Have I built a firm foundation, And I'll tell you what, and I say it to my sponsees all the time, I don't know what they do, they tell me what they did and I choose to believe them. But that hour, and certainly at that time in my sobriety, that's the longest I had ever even attempted to meditate, whatever that was at that point for me. And man, but he said an hour, and I set, I think, a kitchen timer for an hour. And I was going to do it, man, because I didn't want to mess this thing up, because I've never had a white light experience as a result of the 4th and 5th step. My experience is that it washes over me over the ensuing, I would say, 6 to 8 months, or weeks rather. That's how it's worked for me. But there are people that have, huge spiritual experiences as a result of that. That has not been my experience. I had an inventory sponsor named Doyd B. Williams. He was a wonderful guy. He was about 5'0". It took him 20 years to get sober, from 37 to 57. His wife, Jo, is a black belt, Al-Anon. She's still living. And when he got sober at 57, he stayed sober for 30 years and died at 87. And all we did every Tuesday at 7 o'clock for 10 years was I would take him 3 resentments. I think he really wanted me to bring sexual inventory, but I didn't have any. So I would bring him 3 resentments every week, and we would talk about them, and we would inventory them and discuss them. And he would say, Ty, excuse my language, you're a selfish, self-centered prick of the lowest order. But that's okay, so am I. And we can still stay sober anyway. I did that for 10 years with him, Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. I looked forward to it every week, except when they had fish and the whole house smelled like fish. And so I can do a 4-column inventory in my head, immediately, quickly, because he had me have like a little pocket notebook that I'd keep in my pocket. And every time I was afraid, I'd start to write my 4 columns, or every time I had a resentment, I would start to write my 4 columns. And after about 5 years, he said, you don't have to keep carrying the notebook, just do it in your head. He taught me so much. I'm so grateful to the men and women of AA for being patient with me and kind to me and repeating things over and over and over again. Once I said to my first sponsor, Bill, why do I have to keep learning this same lesson over and over and over again? He said, it's because you've never learned it. That was a huge epiphany for me. And sometimes that still happens in my life, Because I don't know what I don't know. And I can't hear what I can't hear, and I can't see what I can't see until I know it and hear it and see it. So step 6 for me, listing all those character defects, Doyd had me, when I was working with Bill on the 6th step at the same time, he said, I want, while you're doing that, I want you to do this. I want you to list all your character defects. And on a separate piece of paper, I want you to list all your character assets. So, I filled up a couple of pages, certainly with defects, and maybe 3/4 of a page with assets. And then when I got to Doyd's that night, he had me read them. Okay, let's read all your defects first. I am this, I am that, I am this, I am that, and that, and that. And then he said, okay, now I'm gonna have you do all your assets. And I went through those. And at the end of it, he just posed one question that I could not come up with an answer for. I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, okay, you've read all that. What do you think that makes you? And I'm like, the worst human in the world. He's like, it makes you human. You have all of the good and all of the bad. You have to decide, with the help of your higher power, and starting with physical sobriety, how are you going to deal in the world with yourself and with others? It's a choice. If you're spiritually fit, you're going to do okay. But if you're not spiritually fit, you're going to cause just as much wreckage as you did when you were out there. And I thought about my sobriety at that point, and it's like, oh, yeah, I can see that. I've demonstrated that. The great thing about AA is that we get to be examples, and we also get to be warnings. And God knows I've been both of those things in my sobriety. But no one ever said, you can never come back here. They just gave me the AAFU, keep coming back. As opposed to the Alanine FU, which is, you could be right. So in sixes, I listed all those defects, and became entirely, that word kills us, right? Entirely ready. No reservation, not 1 degree of reservation. I got as entirely ready as I was capable of being at that time. And then in 7, I have prayed all kinds of ways to this power I don't understand. I have pleaded, I have begged, I have talked like I would talk to a friend, and some of my character defects have receded. And then other ones pop up, We say in here it's like a game of whack-a-mole. You hit one down and another one pops up. But I can tell you this, and this is nothing short of a miracle for a drunk like me. Before I got sober, I was paralyzed with financial fear. I had a good job. I wore a monkey suit. I went over the hill to Beverly Hills and went in the big glass building and played the hot shot, and I made a decent amount of money, but I was petrified. I was married to my first wife, who thought if there were checks in the checkbook, there was money in the bank. If you don't know how to balance a checkbook, that is not a true statement. And so we had a lot of financial difficulty. I was paralyzed, and when I got sober, no joke, I would spend at least 30 minutes every morning on my knees praying the fear prayer at the bottom of page 68 of the big book. God, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be, over and over and over and over. And at some point, I can't tell you when, that is the only defective character that has, from whatever day that happened on till today, it happened in my first year of sobriety, till today, has never returned. It doesn't mean I've been financially secure, believe me, but that unrelenting fear of financial insecurity has left me. And I do believe in that situation that God could and would if he were sought, because it happened to me. And if it could happen to me, it can happen for anyone. But that's the most dramatic result that I've ever had with character defects. And then when I got to 8, my sponsor said, I want you to do 3 columns. Those people that you're willing to make amends to now, those people that you're willing to make amends to at some point in the future, and the ones you'll never do. And, I had to go back through my life and, go like from 0 to 10 and 10 to 15. Those teenage years were pretty tough. 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 30, I was 35 at that point, 35. But I really had to search my memory because I was a blackout, pass-out drinker. So there are many people whose names and faces I don't even remember that I'm sure I owed amends to. So there's nothing I could do about that. But the ones that I was able to recall, the people, especially the people closest to me, I was able to make those lists. And I prayed about it a lot. I was instructed to never say the words "I'm sorry" when I made an amends. Because next to "I love you," it is the most often repeated phrase probably in the English lexicon, and the one that maybe means the least in a lot of situations. Nobody wanted to hear me say "I'm sorry" again. So sorry. What Bill instructed me to do was to take responsibility for my action, to express my resentment, to express my regret in an appropriate way without using those words, and to ask if there was anything that I could do that would make it right with us, that would make the relationship whole, whether it ever continued or not. And my experience, for the most part, people were super kind. I very rarely asked for forgiveness in amends, because that's not the last thing I want to do is express my regret and say, can you give me something like forgiveness? So I wasn't instructed around that, but it doesn't necessarily feel right for me. There are certainly people's forgiveness that I crave. But that just wasn't one of the things that I did. But most of them went well, they were happy that I was sober and, trying to live a new way, and they don't know anything about AA, so they're like, okay, all good. To the new guys, do not make an amends without running it by your sponsor first. Because I did that, and it caused more damage to people I didn't even know. It's not that long of a story, but I'm not going to bore you with it. It caused problems, and I shouldn't have done it because my motivation was wrong. My motivation to make that particular amends was to ease my guilt and to get the heat off. That's not the point for me of making amends. I make an amends to get right with God and to get right with that person. Not so I look good, but so that that person knows that what I did, spoke, behaved was wrong. And I know it was wrong. And I have deep regret about that. And I'm here to admit it to your face and to tell you that if there's something I can do that can make it right between us, and that can come in many different forms, I'm more than willing to do that. It's not to get the heat off. It's not to make me look good. It's because I just want to be right with my higher power and my fellows. I don't want to be the guy that people are like, oh, here comes Ty, dude, I want to, and I pray for this every day, I pray that I may be kind, loving, tolerant, and patient with every person who crosses my path today. And that could be anybody in any situation, personal or professional, no matter where I go. That's my greatest hope every day, because you guys taught me that I'm here to live a life of love and service. And that's not just lip service, that's in action, Because my dad used to say this all the time. My dad was a horrible drunk, My mom was in untreated Al-Anon, so nobody was looking at what I was doing because they were too busy with themselves, but he was a super funny guy. And now I've totally lost my train of thought. Oh, Lord, I'm getting terribly old before your eyes. I totally don't remember. Whatever. It was my dad. God, I can't. Well, he said many funny things. That's why I can't think of what it was I was talking about. Oh, well, on it goes. It'll come back on the ride home, Lizzie. So here is the thing I don't suggest, and that is taking a long time to complete your 9th step. It took me 21 years to complete my 9th step. Not because I wasn't willing, but my sponsor at the time, and I'm not taking his inventory, he was my best friend for many, many years. He did so much for me. He taught me so much. But as we say, you can't give away something you haven't got. And after I did the major ones, there was a bunch of other stuff that was still bogging me down. I just don't think he knew how to direct me. And so at 15 years of sobriety, I switched sponsors. I needed somebody with more time and more experience, especially in the spiritual development department. And that's when I met my current sponsor, Herb K., who I've had for 12 years. And he's just another drunk who is so wise and knows this book better than anyone I've ever experienced. And he is, same as Bill, has helped me such a tremendous amount. Especially where my spiritual life is concerned. So when I met Herb for the first time, it was at a workshop he was giving, and Herb was a very successful businessman. He worked in marketing and human relations and stuff, and when he retired, he decided he wanted to do this AA stuff full time. He calls it his ministry, and he takes no money for the workshop. Well, he takes money, but money's only to cover whatever expenses he has, but everything else goes to the Mary and Joseph Retreat Center in Palos Verdes and to a woman's recovery home in the South Bay. He's a tremendous dude. He's written a couple of beautiful books. He's just, I can't say enough wonderful things about him, but he's just another drunk, He's not a guru. But man, he has helped me so much. So when I met him for the first time at a workshop in Santa Clarita, I gave him he said, give me your 2-minute pitch about your experience in AA. And he looked at me and he nodded, and he did the exact same thing. The man who took him through the steps the first time, he told me this later, not at the time. He said, Ty, I can see that you have a lot of information, but very little transformation. And he did that with his hands. He framed his head and his heart. And I felt like I had been stabbed in the chest because I knew he was right. And I knew there was more, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know who could help me find it. I knew Bill couldn't. Bless his heart. He's still sober and he's a wonderful dude. And he said, why don't you call me this week? And that's how our relationship started. And he said, I'll take you through the steps. I'll be your step guide. I don't want to be your sponsor. And by the time I finished my 5th step, I said, I would really like you to be my sponsor now. He said, I saw it coming. That's fine. So he's been my sponsor since. And we started at 1 again. And when we got to 9, he said, bring me your original amends list. I said, how do you know I have it? That was 15 years ago. He said, I know you. I know you. You still have it. He was right. I have my AA file, and it was in my AA file. And so I brought it, and we went through it all, and we talked about it, and one at a time, we went through all that stuff that was still left. And in, 6 or 8 weeks, it was done. It was done. I completed that 9th step. I never have to do a 9th step again as long as I stay current in the 10th step. So that means every day I have to go out into the world and attempt to be present, to see reality as reality truly is, not as the story Ty tells himself or the character that I present to the public. Can I continue to take personal inventory? Can I admit when I'm wrong promptly? And I do that to the very best of my ability every day. Thank you so much. The thing that has helped me with that more than anything else has been the 11th step, which, as far as I'm concerned, is where the rubber meets the road. Talk about something that separates, what does the book say, the men from the boys? More chauvinistic writing on Bill's behalf at the time, but that was the worldview at the time, right? The women from the girls, the whatever from the whatever. Herb taught me even more about prayer and meditation, and he had me add contemplation to my daily practice almost immediately when we started working together. And he had me read some stuff by Father Leo Keating, and who's kind of the father of centering prayer or contemplation, and the difference between meditation and contemplation. And I do my meditation that I do is the same way that Bill and Bob did it. It's at the top of 86. So what they would do when they would gather in Dr. Bob's living room is they would read a piece of scripture. I'm not a scripture dude, but if you are, more power to you. They would read a piece of scripture, then they would adjourn for 10 minutes and people would go to different parts of the house and they would think about that piece of scripture, and then they would come back and share with each other what they had experienced. So Herb said, don't try to clear your mind. That is not the point of this meditation. The point of this meditation is active thinking. So what I do is I take perhaps a pressing problem, a character defect, one of our slogans. I can spend a week on the first line of the Serenity Prayer. My favorite one that Lizzie taught me is, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know. Be still. Be. And then you build it back up till you complete the sentence. So I use my mind actively. And if my mind thinks, I can follow it. I believe that in those moments that God's will many times reveals itself. I have an intuitive thought or a decision about things that used to baffle me. It's so important. I can't stress it enough. Prayer and meditation. Because you hear in the rooms a lot, well, I pray, but I can't sit still and I can't clear my mind. Welcome to the club. So that's been a huge part of my life. It's my favorite part of every day. Without a doubt, I look forward to it. But the other thing that Herb had me do is, he said, you're smart enough that you can work a 10th step throughout your day. We're going to use it like the 12 and 12 talks about as a spot check inventory. So in the moment, inventory if you need to inventory, make an amends if you need to make an amends. If you skip something, then in 11, you're going to do an 11-step inventory, and you're going to do a radar sweep across your day. Is there anything that you did horribly, or anything that you did really well, or any amends that you forgot to make, or glossed over, or whatever? I want you to take those things into meditation before you go to bed so that you're ready to go in the morning and you know what you need to do, what you need to work on for the next day, which maybe are those character defects, or maybe there's an amends I needed to make that I glossed over or forgot about. Because I don't know if you guys can relate, but I am selfish and self-centered. Page 63, the top paragraph says, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we believe is the root of our problem. So if selfish and self-centeredness is the root, then my character defects are the fruit of that very root. Every character defect I have goes back to selfishness and self-centeredness. Because don't you know who I am? Don't you know who I think I am? I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. Haven't you heard that? Thank you. You know, I'm one of those alcoholics that has the same three thoughts every day that every alcoholic has. Why me? What about me? And F you, right? Every day, every day. So the 11th step allows me to start my day and to end my day in a way that slows me down and is acceptable to me, and I believe acceptable to this power. And it's, you know, the spiritual life is never ending. It's just, I'm so fascinated by it. I'm not trying to figure it out. The experiences I get to have, you guys know, when the magic happens, it defies words. It defies explanation of any kind. So that's one of the main things that makes me excited about coming to talk to you guys tonight, which is, this is part of my 12th step, right? I get to tell you guys, I was a hopeless, doomed to die alcoholic, and I get to live a life today that for much of it is joyous, happy, and free, regardless of the situations and circumstances of my life. The last 120 days has been the worst time in my sobriety. Just awful. One situation, completely my fault. Totally my fault. I behaved badly. And it has torn me apart. And that's not for you guys to say, oh, that poor man. I deserve a severe ass kicking. The other part was my house burnt down in the fires in Altadena, somewhere I had lived for 20 years. The part that I messed up, much more heartbreaking than the loss of my house. And what that experience has taught me, I have 4 kids. Sam and Jack were 2 and 4 when I got sober. They're 29 and 31 now. Sam just celebrated a year of sobriety on Halloween of last year. I don't know how this stuff happens, you know? It just does. His sobriety has nothing to do with me. But man, am I proud. But that situation that I caused has caused me more heartbreak than my house burning down. But what has come out of my house burning down is that the outpouring of love that I have received and support and kindness and money and clothing and toilet paper and stuff far outweighs my sorrow at the loss that we faced. That's you guys. You guys taught me that an attitude of gratitude can get me through anything. Anything. And so I'm here to share that, and I share it in meetings, and, you know, I try to do the deal, you know, to the best of my ability. You know, I was heavily involved in H&I for a long time, and I've had to take a little bit of a break, but man, you go in and talk to a group of men or women that are in the judicial system, in the prison system, or the jail system in LA County, and a guy with 3 tattoos of tears on his eyes comes up with tears in his eyes and shakes your hands and said, "Thanks for making time for us." I mean, what? How do I get from where I was to where I am today? Lizzie said it. God's in the beginning, God's in the end, and God's in the middle, you know? Thank you for my life.
Questions? If you have a question for our speaker, raise your hand and please wait to be called on. Are there any questions at the Zoom meeting?
Oh, yeah, of course. I don't think there are any. Yes, sir.
Said you, when you first went to the prayer group or the book study, you found a book that taught you about how to pray. What was that like? How did it change your prayer mission? What did it teach you?
So the gentleman asked me when I went to the prayer group where we read this specific book about praying, how did it affect me initially? Here's the one thing that has been completely God-given of me, and that's willingness. I've always had an abundance of willingness where our program is concerned. I may not have liked it or understood it, but I never said no, and I didn't put it off. I just did it because I knew from my experience that the little bit of effort I would put out would magnify by 1,000 in the benefits that I would get. So that particular book, I just went through and it literally explained how to do those prayers, different types of prayer, standing, sitting, laying down, walking, different invocations. And I would just try them all and see what fit, what felt right. I would just try it, you know? And as a result, having had no religious or spiritual training, I started to get more comfortable very quickly in talking to God, something that I had no concept of before I got sober. That help? Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your talk. I really appreciate how thorough you were, how you went through the steps. Something I wanted to ask you to touch on is if you sponsor guys, the most memorable time you've had or romantic with the sponsee or something like that.
The most memorable? So he's asking about, as far as sponsorship, what's the most memorable experience I've had with a sponsee? Well, there's been several. I used to sponsor this guy named Big Frank, and they called him Big Frank because he looked like a linebacker. He was about 6'5" and 380 and just this huge Puerto Rican dude. He used to work as a bouncer at 90th at Broadway at this Puerto Rican nightclub that I used to stagger by on my way home from my sister's at 96th and Broadway to my apartment at 80th and West End. And he went through the first 30 questions that I did in my line of sponsorship at that time. We did the third step ceremony. We do this little ceremony where we do the third step prayer together and we light some candles and we make it special and neat. And then I never saw him again. I didn't hear from him for a couple of days because I said, okay, start your fourth. I went to the Victory House, which is the recovery house that he was living at, sober living house. Gone. Went to his job. Gone. I've never heard from him again. I hope he's okay. I don't know where he is. I met a guy on the early show. English was his second language. But my first sponsor, Bill, said, I hope one day you get a sponsee just like you. And this guy was just like me. He wanted it, and he wanted it bad, and he was willing to do anything. And he never said no, and he did all his writing assignments, and he would call me daily, and all that stuff we ask sponsees to do, and they just don't do. And I was so thrilled for him, and continue to be thrilled for him. But there was a language barrier, you know, so we kind of just found our own way of talking to each other. That's been super memorable. I have the honor and privilege of sponsoring a woman in Pakistan who is 21 years old right now. We talk, I don't know that I've ever talked to a sponsee more than I've talked to her. And we talk for an hour every time. And she's a young woman. She's in an unbelievably oppressive society. And she knows that the 12 steps is the only way that she's going to get better. And she's just starting on her fourth step. So I'm super excited about that. And I have sponsored a couple of women in the past, and as her instructed me, when we do our fifth step, they read the resentments and their fears, but they do their sexual inventory with another sober woman, because I have no experience, strength, and hope as a sober woman. Believe it or not. Right? Anybody else? Yes, sir. Hey, Alan.
Thank you so much, Ty. I had a question without probing the details of it. You mentioned that you made an event didn't have sponsorly direction. I was just wondering what in the order of events that came in, and did it blow up in your face right away, or did it deteriorate over time?
So Bill was so great when I started my amends, and he had me write out scripts for the first several, and I would go and role play with him, and we would role play where the amends was accepted and gracious, and also where I was yelled every four-letter word in the book, right? So we had gotten through all that stuff, and some time had passed, and this person came to my mind, someone I had no longer any contact with, but I was able to find their address. They had a fairly unusual name. They lived in a small town in Texas, and I wrote a letter and I sent it. Maybe 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, a gentleman called me and yelled at me, "Who are you? What do you want with my wife?" Apparently there was another woman in that same small Texas town with the same name as the person I was trying to make amends to. So I had to deal with his anger. Then the woman, she said, she was really cool. She's like, "Don't worry about it. I get her mail on occasion. It's not a big deal." But he was pissed. I didn't role play that one with my sponsor, right? I said we get to be an example or warning. That was a huge warning, red flag, bad. I never did that again though. So I guess that was the lesson I was supposed to learn.